This is what happens after Crimewatch is off the air. The set has been dismantled and the studio made ready for another show. The police have all gone back to work, hoping that someone watching Crimewatch will help move their case on to the real theatre of crime, the courtroom. In the example we'll see tonight, witnesses, police and actors have helped to reconstruct from evidence and transcripts the sequence of events. To protect privacy, we've changed 3 people's names. Crimewatch, as usual, was called in only late in the investigation when the inquiry was in danger of running out of breath. And as so often happens, what the programme yielded is not an instant fix, but just one crucial page in a long, intriguing chapter of revelations.
Ron, Roger, it's good to see you again. How are you?
Hello, Father. I'm much better, thank you. I can't see Michael here, can you? No. He did say he'd try and come this morning. I think I'll just go and look for him. These boys are so unreliable.
How is he, Roger? Is he getting better?
I don't know, Father. I don't know. He was determined to come to church this morning because it's his turn to read the lesson today, but he's not strong. He's not the man he was.
He looks terribly frail. What did the doctors say?
Well, confidentially, they've told him that he's got hepatitis B. I've got a feeling that they think he might not pull through.
A reading from the book of the Revelations of Blessed John the Apostle.
Ronald Harrison had been steadily declining in health. He'd retired from work and increasingly sought solace not only in the church, but through heavy bouts of drinking gin.
And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away."
Ron? Ron? Ron?
Yes, brother.
Hello, what have we got? Hello, sir. The deceased is Ronald Harrison. He was found this morning by his cleaning lady. There's no sign of forced entry to the premises, but we have had a look at the body, and there's a mark on the temple that we're not happy with. Okay.
When a senior investigating officer is called to the scene of a suspicious death, they have to make their mind up fairly quickly whether this really is likely to be a murder, so that they can preserve the scene from contamination and the possible destruction of vital clues. Now, when I first walked into that bedroom, I knew immediately something wasn't quite right. Right, I'd like to turn the body over, Neil. If you can give me a hand, we'll have a look, see what's underneath. There were scratch marks to his face and his legs, and embedded in his right leg was a penny. It was a rather gruesome sight, and it was obvious that he'd suffered before he died. Yes, you're right, I'm not happy about this at all. Can you contact Woolwich and by radio and ask them to contact the lab liaison and photographic and get them out here with an ETA? And can they also inform the coroner's officer?
Right, thanks, sir.
When did you last see him alive?
On Saturday. He gave a dinner party with some friends. It was his birthday recently, and we were celebrating. And then I saw him again the next morning at church. He's a very religious man.
How are we doing, Bob?
Yeah, I'm just doing a close-up of his face.
Did he live here on his own?
Yes, he wasn't married. From time to time he had young men come to live here, but they didn't stay long. Of course, I knew he was homosexual.
On that same day, I found two important clues. Firstly, an empty credit card holder by the side of Ron Harrison's bed, which indicated that the killers had almost certainly stolen some of his property. More importantly, I found a diary in which Ron Harrison kept meticulous records of all the people he met, so immediately we had dozens of individuals to speak to.
I can tell you that he's died from having his neck compressed. A lot of force has been used, and there are several fractures to his voice box. There's also bruises on his chest wall, and it looks like the attacker has been sitting or kneeling on his chest and leaning across like this. There are also marks on Harrison's chin, here suggesting that he was trying to pull off the arm of the attacker. And there may well be scratches on that arm or hand of the attacker.
What can you tell me about the marks on his face and legs?
They would have been caused by a sharp object, such as a needle, a piece of broken glass or crockery, being dragged across the skin.
Shooters Hill Police Station is in southeast London and running very short of space. The murder team had to commandeer the snooker room.
Is everybody here? Good morning. Just to put you in the picture, I've just come back from the post-mortem and Dr. Rouse has confirmed that Ronald Harrison was murdered. I can tell you that he was murdered in an extremely brutal fashion, and there's a strong possibility that he was in fact tortured before he died. I'd like you also to bear in mind that as a result of what the pathologist has told me, there's a strong possibility that two men were involved in the murder of Mr. Harrison. Bernie, I want you to run the house-to-house inquiries, but I want you to bear in mind that at the moment, the last sighting we had of Mr. Harrison alive was on Sunday, the 4th of November. His body was found yesterday, that's Wednesday, the 7th of November. We need to know what was he doing between those times.
I think it was last Tuesday morning.
And where did you see him?
And he was walking up, going towards his house.
Well, I think it was on Monday afternoon, just after lunch. He was with a couple of boys and they were getting into a taxi, I think.
Yes, that's right. But I think they were coming up the path towards the house.
Are you sure? I don't think so. That's not right, because I remember I was putting Jamie into the car at the time.
People had come forward to say they'd seen Ron Harrison alive the Monday, the Tuesday, even the Wednesday. We felt at the time this couldn't all be correct, but we couldn't discount any of it. It later turned out that the most important information came from Ron Harrison's next-door neighbours, Mr. and Mrs. Brittle.
Can you recall anything unusual about Monday evening last?
Yes, I can, because I went to bed before midnight and while I was in bed there was a lot of scuffling next door, in Ron's house next door to mine, in the bedroom. And then I heard 3 knocks and then a thud.
Then I went out the back door to have the smoke, and as I did, I looked up and I saw Ron's bedroom window was alight. I saw a shadow crossing the window, and then a second shadow crossed, and it appeared that they were carrying something.
This is interesting, Bob. We've got a darning needle which was lying with the point towards and touching this cabinet here. We were conscious of the particular injuries on Harrison, and therefore we were looking for something that could have caused them in the immediate vicinity of where he was found. Downstairs we found broken glass, shards of which again could have been used to cause these wounds. We found on a sofa evidence of blood, and confirmed that with a localized test. Tests at the laboratory confirmed that the blood we had was not that of Harrison. However, there was sufficient for a DNA probe to be done. And so we now had the possibility of a DNA profile of the killer.
Hello, incident room, Shooters Hill. Michael, sorry, who? Hello, Mr. Slater. Yes, that's right. We are investigating the murder, the Ron Harrison murder. Yes. Okay. Can you hold on for a minute, please? Governor?
Yes, John?
Got Michael Slater on the phone. When do you want to see him?
I'd like to see him as soon as possible, please. Can you see if he can come into Woolwich?
Yes, sir. Mr. Slater?
Our first real suspect was a man called Michael Slater. He'd been described to us as a young man whom Ron Harrison was very fond of, one of his favourites. We'd heard that he was due to meet Ron on the Sunday before he died, and as such was the last person to see him alive that we knew about.
We were due to go to church together and then go out to lunch afterwards.
And did you?
Well, no. I overslept that morning. I'd been out drinking the night before. So I phoned Ron and told him I probably couldn't make church. He was a bit upset, but we arranged to meet at the Spread Eagle restaurant in Greenwich after the service. Hello, Ron.
Michael, how lovely to see you.
Sorry about church this morning.
Oh, never mind. Can I get you a drink?
Thanks. Afterwards, we took a taxi back to Plum Lane. I remember we had to get one big enough to fit my bike in. We got back to the house at about 4. It was empty. I remember we opened another bottle of wine, and I drank nearly all of it and then fell asleep on the sofa. Ron went upstairs to rest. I remember hearing songs of praise on the telly at about 6. Then at about 8...
Hello? No, look, I'm sorry, it's not possible tonight. I've got people here and we don't want to be disturbed. Yeah. Okay. That was, Timmy wanting to come round. Such a nuisance, those boys, always phoning up asking for money.
Oh, yeah? I knew Timmy was a boy I had seen several times at St. Paul's. He always seemed rather surly, and Ron gave me the feeling he was a bit scared of him. Later on, Ron went upstairs to make another call and then went to bed. Soon after that, I went to bed too. I slept in the bedroom in the front of the house. Ron and I were only ever friends. There was never anything sexual between us. We visited clubs and talked a lot about our lives. And I would tell him about people I had met, and he told me his adventures.
And did he have many adventures?
Yes, a few.
So what happened on the Monday?
I got up late at about 11, and shortly afterwards we went out to lunch. We took a taxi to the Earl of Chatham pub in Woolwich. Ron said he had heard it did good food.
Did anyone see you there? Can anyone verify the story?
I remember it was busy. Oh yes, and I remember a little old man pinched our table when we were getting some food. I particularly remember him because he was reading a copy of the Telegraph and eating prawn-flavoured crisps. I remember thinking this was a bit of a cheek, because the pub didn't sell crisps. Afterwards, we went back to Plum Lane by bus.
Oh, answer that for me, will you, Michael? I'm afraid it'll be those Deptford boys pestering me again. If it's someone called Timmy, say I'm not here, will you?
Hello? Hello? Is there anyone there? Is that Timmy? No one there. Probably a wrong number.
So the last time you saw Mr. Harrison was on the Monday afternoon at about 3:30?
Yes, that's right.
Are you absolutely sure that you've told us everything? Because you should know that we'll check this story in every detail.
Is there anything else you want to tell us?
No, I've told you everything.
Would his story break? Could Slater be the killer? Or could other suspects be unearthed? Inspector Allen went to Mr. Harrison's church, St. Paul's, in Deptford, to interview Canon David Diamond.
How well did you know Ron Harrison, Father?
We've known each other for years. When I first started here in 1969, he was deputy headmaster at Haberdasher Aske's. And we got to know each other then because I used to visit the school quite frequently.
I understand that some of the altar boys who attend your church also visited Mr. Harrison's home. Were you aware of this?
I do remember him asking a few boys over coffee in the vestry after a service if they'd like to do some gardening for him. But that was some time ago.
Did you know that Mr. Harrison was homosexual?
By orientation, yes, but I always thought he was non-practicing. It certainly wasn't something that intruded upon the church or our relationship, and I never heard any mention of it from any of the boys.
Did you ever take his confession?
Yes, I did, quite recently, in fact. When he arrived, he was in a very troubled state. But when he left, I think he was feeling better.
I do respect the sanctity of the confessional, Father, but equally I hope you understand I'm investigating a murder. So would you be prepared to tell me what he was troubled about?
I'm sorry, but I really couldn't possibly breach that confidence.
We knew from Ron's diary that he often visited gay pubs and clubs in London's West End, and that he sometimes picked up rent boys from places like the Golden Lion. Clearly, this was an important line of inquiry.
I'm investigating the murder of this man. Have you seen him here? Can you tell me anything about him?
I used to come here for a drink sometimes. Occasionally pick up boys.
Do you know anything about the boys?
No, I don't know anything about them.
Listen, I understand your reluctance in speaking about them, but I'm not interested in the boys apart from finding out about this man. You sure you don't know anything at all?
I'm sorry, I don't want to get involved.
A lot of gay people are traditionally reluctant to speak with police. And in this case, they were particularly worried that their names would be stored on a computer. This was due in part to an article which appeared in a gay newspaper at the time, which criticised a murder investigation down in Sussex for what they felt was misuse of information. So at the start of this inquiry, we were getting a very negative response. The way we dealt with this was that I wrote a letter to the paper explaining exactly how such information is used and reassuring them that we were not using a computer on this inquiry. We also invited any leader of the gay community to come along to the incident room to see us, and Jeremy Clark of the Gay London Policing Group came along and saw for himself. And this is the card system on which the details of all information that comes into the inquiry are stored. As you can see, there's no computer at all.
Right, this is the only place people's details have been kept. This is the first time that the police had approached Gallup to ask us for our help. From our point of view, I had to be convinced that they were going to handle the matter sensitively and that the investigation will be done properly. Say you've got an 18-year-old who's coming forward giving you information and it turns out that he's in a sexual relationship, an underage relationship, what do you do then?
We're not interested in any other matters apart from solving this murder. And indeed, there has been an immunity arranged with the Crown Prosecution Service for those kind of matters that come to light. We're not interested in them at all.
That's good, right. I thought they'd be very wary of an organisation that's been critical of them like ours. But in fact, they were very open with me about the way they were going about things. And then I was in a position to be able to reassure people that their names and details weren't being put onto a computer, for example.
Afterwards, the response was much better, and we began to get a picture of Ron Harrison's behaviour in the West End. It was almost like he was two different people. There were a lot of aspects to Ron Harrison's life that many people would disapprove of, but at the same time, there was much to respect about the man. For 16 years, he had been a highly regarded headmaster of Wallington High School for boys in Surrey. My officer spoke to literally dozens of people he'd worked with,
and there was not the slightest hint of any untoward behaviour.
New clues, though, were beginning to emerge from the investigation of the murder scene. 2 fingerprint experts spent a week there and recovered 93 different sets of palm or fingerprints. 19 were on the wallpaper immediately above the bed. Everyone who knew Ron Harrison was asked to give their prints, on the assurance that the records would be destroyed when the investigation was completed. Nobody refused.
Smashing. Thank you very much.
They ended up with hundreds of different marks, and checking them took experts at Scotland Yard a full 2 months.
Hello there. DC Harty from the incident room at Shooters Hill Police Station.
Meanwhile, it had emerged that Mr. Harrison had a conviction for drink driving, since when he tended to use taxis. Paul Harty had the task of talking to every cabbie in the district.
If any of the taxi drivers recognise him, can you give me a ring at the police station at Shooters Hill?
Good afternoon, cars. Hold the line, Mill, please. Number 368, part of the 20 corner. Afternoon, cars.
This docket says that you collected a fare from Plum Lane on Monday the 5th of November at about 6:30 p.m. Do you remember that call?
Yeah.
Was the person you collected this man, Ron Harrison?
Yeah, I know him. I've cabbed for him before. I got to Plum Lane at about 7:15.
Was there anybody else with him?
2 boys came out of the house, first of all. They were aged about 18, and they had Cockney accents. They were both a bit leery and a bit full of themselves.
I don't see why we have to go with him.
Because he isn't going to go and get it on his own, is he?
Where is that nonce? Oh, dickhead. Come on, will ya?
Ron Harrison came out shortly after the boys. He was very drunk.
Barclays Bank in Woolwich. I want you to wait for me and bring me back.
Yeah, all right.
Left here.
I took him to Barclays Bank. He kept giving me directions on the way there. It got up my nose a bit. I mean, I think I know the way there after cabbing for 10 years. What's he been on to get in a state like that?
You've been on the tablets. You've been drinking gin and that.
Stay out, that silly bastard.
I did feel the 2 boys had seen Ron Harrison before. They was just too cocky around him. You know, they wasn't shy of him. It wasn't as if they were good friends exactly, but as if they just knew each other.
It wouldn't give me any money.
On the journey back to Plum Lane, nobody said very much. The boys were very quiet, and they weren't laughing anymore.
Did you see the boys? Could you describe them to me?
I caught a glimpse of one of them in the mirror. I think I might just be able to recognise him again, but I'm not too sure.
This was a really vital breakthrough, particularly when we put it together with the evidence of Ron's next-door neighbours, Kitty and Albert Britton, who had heard banging noises and saw figures in Ron's bedroom window on the same night. We began to feel reasonably certain that the murder had been committed on that Monday night. But most important of all, we had 2 new suspects to find.
They also had to find a motive. Once the fingerprint and scientific teams had finished at the house, a thorough search could start. Every cupboard, every document was carefully examined, and one find looked as though it might lead the inquiry in a new direction.
JJ, do you want to have a look at this?
As you know, a final demand for an access bill of some £500 has been found in Ron Harrison's house, belonging to a Timothy Kelly. Now, we've done some research into Timothy Kelly and find that he's got a minor conviction for criminal damage. This offence was committed with a man called Mark Dooley. We know that Timothy Kelly and Mark Dooley hang around a lot together and that they attended St Paul's Church in Deptford and that they were altar boys there. They're also both known to Father Diamond, who is in fact bringing Kelly into Woolwich Police Station this afternoon, where he's going to be interviewed by Bernie and John.
I first met a geezer about 2 years ago. Father Diamond introduced us after church one day, and he asked us if we wanted to earn a few bob doing some gardening. So Mark and myself went up to his house fairly soon after.
And Mark is Mark Dooley?
He is a mate.
I see. And what happened?
We like mowed his lawn, did some weeding, that sort of thing. He paid us 20 quid, gave us a drink, and then phoned for a cab to take us home.
How often did you go and do this for Mr. Harrison?
Quite a lot, really. Became a nice little learner for me and Mark.
Were you aware that Mr. Harrison was a homosexual?
Oh, yeah, we clocked that straight away. So Mark and I made sure we always went round here together, like, and we always phoned before we went, so if he had any friends staying, we'd, like, stay away, do you know what I mean?
And can you explain how this letter, addressed to you, came to be in Mr. Harrison's house?
Yeah, about 3 or 4 weeks ago, like, Mark and I went round there.
What day was it?
I don't really remember. But we arrived in the afternoon about 3 o'clock. We didn't do any gardening that day. We just had a drink with him, you know. Ron was like saying that he wanted the place done up, like decorated. And I had this letter in my pocket, and I took it out and showed it to him. And he agreed to pay in exchange for us doing the painting, like.
His attitude was very defensive, and I felt that either he had previously a bad experience with the police, or he was guilty of something. And as such, I became so uneasy that before he left the police station, I asked to see his wrists.
Yes, please, Mr. Kelly.
What? Yeah, I suppose so.
What were these marks caused by?
Like I got them falling down outside a pub one night when I'd had a few too many.
You were drunk, were you?
Yeah, that's right, and I fell over.
They could have been caused by him falling over, as he suggested. But equally, they could have been defence wounds caused by some sort of struggle. And as such, I made it my business that the next time I saw his friend, Mark Dooley, I would look at his wrists. I see you have some cuts and scars on your wrists. Can you tell me what caused them?
Yeah. I fell down outside a pub one day, like, after I had a few too many.
I see. I found it extraordinary that Mark Dooley should have the same injuries and give the same explanation as Timmy Kelly, and I felt that they'd concocted a story between themselves, and I became even more suspicious of them. So how did this idea of decorating Mr. Harrison's house come up?
Well, because of the state of the place and that. I mean, there was this big crack in the corner of the wall.
So did you go around the house looking at all the rooms that needed decorating?
No, not all the rooms, no.
So which rooms have you been into in Mr. Harrison's house?
The front room, the kitchen and the conservatory.
Have you ever been in any of the upstairs rooms, in any of the bedrooms?
No, definitely not. The only rooms I've been in upstairs is the toilet. I mean, I never went into any of the bedrooms. There was never any reason.
We know that from time to time, Mr. Harrison had sex with boys. Are you certain that he never took you into the bedroom for
Is she calling me a queer or what?
For any reason?
No, I never. No. Look, I ain't had sex with him. I wouldn't want to, and I definitely didn't go into his bedroom.
So who had been in Ron Harrison's bedroom? The pattern was beginning to come clear.
I've positioned on the wall all the marks that the fingerprint branch have identified so far. These are all made by the same person, Mark Kendall, and it would be interesting to hear an explanation for them.
Well, I've spoke to Kendall. He used to live with Harrison. He's explained how those marks came to be there.
What's his alibi like, Kim?
No, it's pretty watertight. He was in Doncaster when the murder took place.
What about these marks, Ken?
These are all made by a second person. and it would be interesting to hear an explanation for them.
I find these marks interesting. The position is as if someone's leant against the wall whilst dragging something onto the bed.
And those marks belong to Mark Dooley.
Mark, tell me again which rooms in Ron Harrison's house you've been in.
The sitting room, the kitchen, the conservatory and the toilet upstairs.
Are you certain? Have you ever been inside the bedroom?
No, never. Definitely not.
Are you sure you haven't been in Mr. Harrison's bedroom for any reason whatsoever?
No, never ever.
Well, I have to tell you that I have irrefutable proof that you have been inside that room.
Yeah? So what's that?
I have irrefutable proof that you have been inside that room.
Yeah, well, I'm denying it.
Are you sure?
Well, he might have said one time, go up and get something. I don't know. Yeah, that's it. I had to get an extension lead one time for the lawnmower.
Where was the extension lead then?
I don't know, I can't remember.
Well, don't you think you better try, Mark? This is rather serious.
I don't know. I think it was on the wardrobe, yeah, that's right, it was on the wardrobe.
Your fingerprints were found on the wall next to Mr. Harrison's bed, Mark. That's nowhere near the wardrobe. So how do you explain that?
I slipped and brushed against the wall.
You slipped? How did that happen?
Don't know, can't... I think I tripped over a shoe and put my hand out to steady myself.
You fell over a shoe?
Yeah, well, I quite often fall over shoes.
Oh, come on, Mark, this won't do, will it? You're lying, and these are juvenile lies. I put it to you that you were there when Mr. Harrison was murdered.
No.
Dooley was obviously very shaken, and we thought he might confess. So we called a halt to the interview in order that he be properly legally represented by a solicitor. Thereafter, he was able to compose himself, and at the end of the interview, we felt that we didn't have sufficient evidence to charge him, and so he was released. When you were doing your gardening for Mr. Harrison, did you ever use an extension lead?
Yeah.
And where was that extension lead kept?
I don't know, in a conservatory, I think.
Are you sure?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Did you ever have to go up to Mr. Harrison's bedroom to get an extension lead?
No, never.
Where were you on Monday night, the 5th of November?
We was at a fireworks display at the Kenny Adventure Playground in Deptford.
And who was with you?
I don't know, I can't remember. There was a bunch of people.
Was Mark with you?
Yeah, Mark was one, and my cousin Angela, and a few others.
Are you sure? You see, we have a witness who saw two boys with Ron Harrison on that night. They went with him in a taxi to Woolwich. I think that those two boys could be you and Mark.
No, definitely not. We was at the fireworks like I told you.
Dooley and Kelly were plainly lying, but that didn't prove they were the killers. And some detectives feared the murderer was still unknown to them, perhaps a casual pickup from the West End. What was agreed was that something had been stolen from the house. Why else would they have found an empty credit card holder? So they checked to see what else was missing. And in a cupboard was an empty box for a new portable TV.
We found 2 receipts for 2 televisions, both missing from the house.
Right.
One's a Philips, one's a Decca, both bought in Woolwich at Rumblow's. And we've now found these 2 guarantee cards, both with serial numbers on.
One of those TVs could be this one here. There's an entry in Ron Harrison's diary, the 10th of October. Ronnie Vincent, TV stolen, plus £30.
Have we traced him yet?
No, but there is an action.
Are you Ronnie Vincent?
What?
Are you Ronnie Vincent?
No. That's Vincent. Hello, Ronnie. I'm arresting you on suspicion of burglary. You don't have to say anything unless you wish to do so, but anything you say may be given in evidence.
How did you know Ron Harrison?
Well, it was like when we was kids, we used to go around and wash his car. And then he started giving us booze and cigarettes and that. And it just ended up with going around there for that then, and just drinking with him. We even got him glue sniffing. It was just like a fantasy land, really.
Why did you steal from him?
Well, it was a soft touch. He used to let us let us steal from him. He used to give us money and leave his wallet lying around for us to take money out of it. He never used to mind. When we come round the next time, he never used to say nothing to us.
What about the television then?
Well, I did nick it. I went down there, I didn't have no money. I thought I'd get some money out of Ron about 3 months ago, and he went down the shops and I nicked the telly.
What happened to it?
I sold it in the pub. I got £50 off some geezer.
We believed Vincent's story, and he was certainly never a suspect for the murder, but unfortunately he couldn't remember which of the 2 televisions he had stolen. So I decided that we really had to try and trace both the missing sets.
So it was that 10 weeks into the inquiry, the detectives made a national appeal.
Good evening. On behalf of the BBC, I'd like to welcome you all here tonight to Television Centre and to this edition of Crimewatch UK. I know that we've all been very concerned about events in the Gulf today, and I can now confirm that BBC One is going to be given over entirely to the outbreak of war tonight. But we have been given a slot on BBC Two, so all your hard work won't be wasted. But because of events of today, we can really expect a smaller audience than we're used to.
We began to feel almost as if the fates were stacked against us, and I remember the feeling of disappointment when we were told that we were being moved from BBC One and the reason why. Everyone was very apologetic, and of course we understood. But I remember saying to one of my detectives, who on earth is going to want to watch Crimewatch on the day war broke out in the Gulf?
Thank you.
29 seconds on opening titles, 29 seconds. Coming to camera 3 next.
So stand by with the lighting.
In the event, 3.5 million people watched the programme, barely a quarter of the normal Crimewatch audience.
1 minute left on interview, Sue. Certain items were missing from the house.
Yes, that's right. Ron's Barclay card was taken together with some cash. But the most important thing, where I feel your viewers can in fact help us, is concerning other items, namely 2 television sets. One was a 14-inch Philip television set. As you can see, the serial numbers are up on the screen now. And the second one is a 12-inch Decca. Serial number 2537874. I'd urge anybody that's come into possession of one of these in slightly dubious circumstances since the 5th of November last year to just get up now and look on the back and see what the serial numbers are. And if they match these, please telephone us now. I can tell those people they will be granted immunity from any prosecution, provided they can help us.
So how are you doing? What sort of calls have you had?
Well, we've had 9 calls here in the studio and about 4 back at the incident room.
Not many.
No.
Disappointing, isn't it? The whole place is quiet.
We had a couple of calls which seemed promising at the time and a couple more after the programme, but in the end they all came to nothing.
You've been asked here today to see if you can identify the persons you saw on Monday, November the 5th of 1990 in Plum Lane, South East 18, with Mr. Ronald Harrison. If you recognise anyone, please indicate by calling out the number. Okay?
Okay. We had decided after their last interview to put Dooley and Kelly on an ID parade. They were still our best suspects, and there were 3 witnesses who told us that they had seen Ron Harrison with 2 boys on Monday the 5th of November. The first witness was a neighbour.
No, I'm sorry. I can't make a positive identification.
All right, thank you.
The second was his partner, who also saw Ron Harrison with 2 boys on Monday afternoon.
There's something familiar about number 7, but I couldn't positively say it was him.
Okay, thank you.
This was agonising. She had actually picked out Kelly, but she was so uncertain this couldn't be used in evidence. Our best bet was the taxi driver who had picked Ron and the 2 boys up from Plum Lane on the Monday evening. We were on tenterhooks as he walked down the line. We felt very hopeful that when he saw Kelly and Dooley, he would recognise them.
Do you recognise anyone?
Nah, I can't ID any of them.
Okay, thanks very much.
We were very disappointed. As we left, I remember Kelly saying, "Better luck next time," with a big smirk all over his face.
Still, the 2 boys could not be dismissed from the inquiry, and a detective was sent to check out their alibi.
Hello, Mr. McVicker. John Judges from the CID at Shooters Hill. Can I have a word with you? Certainly.
Richard McVicker had been in charge of the fireworks display, which Mark and Timmy said that they'd attended.
Where was the display?
The display was actually, fireworks were over there, and the audience were on this part of the adventure playground we're in now.
Do you know two boys called Mark Dooley and Timmy Kelly who told us that they were here that night?
I certainly know Timmy Kelly. I can't be sure about Mark Dooley. I might know him by sight.
Did you see either of them?
No, I didn't. But to be absolutely honest, there were over 1,000 people here that night, so I could very well have missed them.
In fact, everyone had missed them at the fireworks, except Timmy Kelly's cousin, Angela, who insisted they were at the display.
It was a most frustrating time. Morale was falling, the inquiry was being run down, officers were being sent back to division. We desperately needed a breakthrough.
It came in the form of this man, Chief Superintendent Tony Humber, unconnected with the murder squad, but a member of the congregation at Ron Harrison's old church.
Well, this was Saturday morning, probably about 10 days after the Crimewatch programme. I received an urgent telephone call from Canon David Diamond requesting to see me urgently.
Tony, I'm in a terrible position. I've just come upon some information on the Ron Harrison murder case, and it affects two of my boys, and I just don't know what to do for the best.
Father, you know, you must tell me everything, then I'll see what I can do.
Well, I was walking through Deptford Market, happy as Larry, when a woman I know came up to me and she said...
Oh, excuse me, Father. Could I have a word with you in confidence?
Why, yes, of course. Is it important?
Well, yes. It's about that friend of yours who was murdered.
Oh, yes, you mean poor Mr. Harrison?
That's right. Do you remember Jane Whitmore? You married her about 4 years ago.
Yes, she's your next-door neighbour, isn't she?
She was, Father. She moved away last November.
Mm-hmm.
Well, after the Crimewatch programme, she rang me and she was in a terrible state. She said that a television set that had been on the programme had been sold to her by a boy that she said goes to your church.
Really?
Well, she's terrified of getting someone into trouble. She realised she had to do something. So I said I'd talk to you.
Did she say who the boy was?
Yes, she did, Father. She said his name was Timmy Kelly.
Well, it was the day of the ID parade in Brixton. And later that morning, Timmy came round to see me.
Hello, Fav. Is it all right for the lift to Brixton?
I'm sorry, Timmy, I can't. I've got a funeral to do.
All right. Do you think I could have some money for a cab?
Yes, in a minute. But, Timmy, I've got to talk to you urgently. I heard from a lady that you sold someone a television set belonging to Ron Harrison. Is that true?
Yeah, Look, I've got to go, Fav. I'll be late for the parade. I'll tell you about it later.
Both Mark and Timmy came to see me later that night, and they explained what had happened.
Well, we did steal his telly, Father. You see, we went round there on a Sunday night to talk to him about a decorating job. But he was drunk-like, and he made a suggestion to us, like, if we wanted the money, we'd have to do something extra for it.
Something sexual?
Yeah, that's right. And we told him we weren't into that kind of thing. And he got the ump. And he went upstairs and fell asleep. So out of spite, like, we took the telly, because we thought we'd never get the money.
Have you said all this in your statements to the police?
No, Father, we ain't.
Why on earth didn't you tell the truth?
Because it was a Sunday night when we did it, and we thought it was a bit too close to the murder.
Tony, I've never been in such a difficult position in my life. I just can't believe these boys could have done it. But I've told them they've got to come clean and tell the police everything. But do you think it would be possible for Inspector Allen to talk to them here, in the church? I'm sure it would be easier for the boys, and I could make sure they're here.
At last we had the breakthrough, but very disappointed that Canon Diamond hadn't come to see us sooner. Had we been able to confront Dooley and Kelly with the information about the television set, we felt sure they would have confessed. Instead, by talking to them himself, Father Diamond had forewarned Dooley and Kelly and given them time to make up a story. However, luckily for us, we could see that at least part of their story was a lie.
Hello?
Kelly and Dooley had told Father Diamond that they had stolen the television from Ron Harrison on the Sunday night. Well, we knew from Michael Slater's evidence that this simply wasn't true.
That was Timmy wanting to come round.
We believed Slater was telling the truth. And we were certain that he and Ron Harrison spent the entire Sunday evening alone together at his home. Now Dooley and Kelly were claiming that they were there that night, that they stole the TV that night. It was yet another lie. As you know, Timothy Kelly and Mark Dooley have asked for a meeting with me alone in St Paul's Church to talk about the television set, which they admitted to Father Diamond they did in fact steal. If they repeat to me what I understand they've told him, I intend to arrest them both for murder. Bernie, I want you and Kevin in Crossfield Street by the gap in the wall. John, I want you in Deptford Church Street covering the path. And Danny Pankhurst and Bob Mackenzie, I want to cover the front of the church. I'll have a radio with me, and if I do need any urgent assistance, I'll give you 3 bleeps on the radio. So when exactly did you steal the television set from Ron Harrison?
On a Sunday night.
And what time was that?
Between about 6 and 7.
And that was on the Sunday night?
Yeah, that's right. The Sunday.
All units from DI Allen, I'm coming out of the church now with Dooley and Kelly, over.
I don't think Dooley and Kelly could quite believe it when we arrested them. I think after the ID parade, they really thought they'd got away with it. We took them back to Woolwich Police Station for further questioning, but our real priority was to locate the stolen television and to take a statement from the woman who bought it.
I was home packing for our move. My neighbour's daughter Lorraine was with me. There was a knock at the door. It was Timmy Kelly. He asked me if I wanted to buy this portable TV for 50 quid. It was just what I needed for the caravan. I would have called sooner, but I was frightened, and I couldn't believe he would do something like that.
In your previous statements, you said that you had telephoned Mr. Harrison on the Sunday night. Why didn't you say then that you had gone round to see him that night?
No comment.
We know that somebody was with Mr. Harrison on the Sunday. How do you explain that?
No comment.
Why didn't you say in your earlier interviews that you had been in possession of the TV set?
No comment.
Who actually killed Mr. Harrison? You or Mark?
No comment.
I can't remember exactly how my hands got on the wall. I mucked about in the room a bit. Then I pulled the bed out and there was this clock radio thing underneath the bed, like, which I wanted to have a look at.
And this story about this extension lead, that's all rubbish, is it?
Well, there was an extension lead there.
But you weren't looking for an extension lead.
No.
And what about this tripping over a shoe? Was that rubbish as well?
I have tripped over shoes before.
Did you trip over a shoe in his bedroom before?
No.
So you've come out with a total pack of lies?
Not a total pack.
Well, did you trip over a shoe or not?
No.
Right, so why say so in the first place?
Because I wanted to.
Although the evidence we had was circumstantial, we felt we had enough to put before a jury. We had the defence marks to both boys' wrists. They had lied endlessly about their alibis, about their visits to Ron Harrison's house, and about where they'd been in Harrison's house. As well as Mark Dooley's prints, scientists also found a fingerprint belonging to Kelly in Harrison's bedroom. And the blood spots found on the sofa covers were positively identified as belonging to Mark Dooley. And finally, we had the television. We were certain that they had done it.
Timothy Kelly, Mark Dooley, you are both charged on or before the 7th of November 1990 You did murder Ronald Harrison. That is against the peace. Can you take him down for me, please?
Come with me.
And I heard a great voice out of heaven saying, Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away.